Hey everyone, this is Mason. Just a quick shout out and a huge thank you to all of our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Your support is so appreciated and it helps us keep the lights on, as they say, here at both HerbRally and the podcast. If you'd like to support our podcast by becoming a member of the HerbRally Schoolhouse, you can do so for only $10 per month. You can try your first 30 days for free with coupon code podcast at checkout, and you can learn more and register at herbally.com/schoolhouse. And in addition, members get access to exclusive videos, classes, audio and monographs, a private Facebook group, discounts to herbal companies, and more. So one more time, learn more at herbally.com/schoolhouse. And don't forget to use the coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. One more time, a huge thanks to all of our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Now on to the show. Enjoy. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. The content in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to cure, diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. This information has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. We are not doctors, nor do we play one on the internet. Please seek advice from a qualified healthcare professional. Okay, MC Calico, take it away.
Yeah. Smoking herbal blends. We need some Mullen and some Kush, my brethren. While listening to HerbRally podcast again. Herbalism at its finest with Mason Hutchinson. Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Abrah Arneson. Welcome to the show, Abrah.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Mason. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, and I just realized I don't know if I've ever actually said your name out loud,
Abrah.
at least on Abrah. Whew. All right, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Welcome to the show, Abrah.
No worries.
Well, I'm really excited to chat with you. In fact, I believe this is our first time connecting via at least video. So, and I'm super bummed. I was invited by Penelope Boudreau to go to an event up in Canada.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not going to work out. So well, as of now, it's 99% sure not going to work out. But I guess the first question I really had for you was, it seems like there's a robust herbal scene where you're at. And I was just curious if you could tell the HerbRally audience where you're at and kind of a bit more about the herbal scene going on up there.
Yeah. So I'm Canadian up here in Canada. And I've lived all over Canada. I'm kind of like a really mobile person. Originally from Toronto. And yeah, so I'm involved in the herb scene on the West Coast. That's where I went to school. And then I lived in Alberta for a number of years. So, there's a scene there. And then I live in Quebec, which is the Francophone territory of Canada. So I live in a franglais environment, we'll call it. And so there's a huge Quebec herbal world, which I'm slowly entering. I've lived here for 5 years now, and I am an Anglophone, but I, work on my French. And so it's a Francophone Quebec community here primarily, but I'm working on trying to integrate some of that. And then there's Ontario. And Ontario, that's where Penny is, my good pal Penny. And so Ontario has a whole thing going. Yeah, so, and then there's the coast, the East Coast, which has another whole crew. So yeah, it's, I don't think we're as rambunctious as the American. Canadians take a long time to organize.
Sure.
My American friends who I've been on boards with and that, they go, you guys just talk about everything like way too long. Like you don't do action. And it's kind of like that. And kind of it just takes us a long time to actually, we have these long winters. So everybody kind of, and then the summer, no one wants to do anything but be outside. So it's kind of like, yeah, we have a hard time organized. They're not as organized, I would say. And yeah.
So I saw you share something about, is the Kootenay herb gathering?
Kootenay. Yeah.
Kootenay. Are you going to that?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm heading over there. So yeah, so that's I'm flying into Calgary and meeting up with oh, you want to know, and a really amazing woman you should talk to is
Who's that?
Flo Lavalley, and this woman is like, oh, one of my heroes all time, and she's in Saskatoon, and she has this really old program where she's been working with Native women on the streets in Saskatoon. And yeah, so meeting Flo in Calgary, and then we're going to drive to the Kootenays, which is about 6 hours. And yeah, and see a few friends in Calgary. And yeah, that's looks like a really, like, they've done a great job with the lineup there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just interviewed Chanchel Cabrera, and I
Oh
believe
yeah,
she's one of
Chantal.
the organizers. I believe the event's actually on her land. So one of the perks of not only recording these episodes but then editing them too is I get to kind of take notes on everything. So I'm gonna have to hit you up for that name that you just mentioned, one of your herbal heroes.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to
That would
her.
be awesome. That would be great. Well, very good. Thanks for sharing a little bit about where you're from and what you're up to. And I would like to know, what was your introduction to the healing world of plants? How did you get involved in herbalism?
How did I get, well, I grew up in Toronto, very urban, walking on sidewalks. Not too much plants going on in my world. And how did I get, I think, I remember a tea shop when I was in my young teens, and I had my babysitting money and all that. And I would go to the tea shop and
Mm,
get all the different teas out of the bins and try things and have tea parties with teapots. And then, yeah, so sort of kind of then, did a fair bit of experimentation with different types of herbs that, you know, over a number of years. I ended up in Paris eventually, and that's where I was really introduced to herbal medicine tisanes.
mm,
And we would drink tisanes for sleep and tisanes for digestion, and it was very common, very easy, very accessible. People talked about it. It wasn't something outside of the community I was living in.
mm.
And then yeah, anyways, ended up back in Canada. Yeah, and just kind of like, I don't know, I actually well, how did I, yeah, I don't know, I've always been a herbalist, but I never was a herbalist. And then I wanted to go to herb school, and there wasn't really anything in Canada. There was like, I sent away for herb school at one point and ended up with all these like handouts mailed to me of this list of actions, which, now I rant about actions and
Mm,
just how useless they are, and like,
mm,
don't, yeah. And I was just like, oh, and I have a little learning disability. So like that kind of learning doesn't really work for me. And so that didn't work. And I spent a lot of time living in central Ontario in the bush. And so that was a big learning about plants and being with plants and the seasons and landscapes. And that was a meditation center. So I lived there for many years. And then I ended up in, yeah, and along the way, I was in Asia for a while, and I got really sick, and I got back to Canada, and I was like 95 pounds, and walked into a health food store because when they discharged me from the hospital, they said, eat meat. That was the advice. And I was like, no muscle mass. And I went into a health food store thinking, well, they can help me maybe. And the woman was very earnest and really like wanted to help me. But, all of a sudden there were like all these plastic bottles on, beside the cash, and it was like $500, and I'd been like overseas for a year. I had no money. I was sick. Like, how am I, just
mm,
remember going down to the beach and thinking there must be better medicine like that is affordable. Like there
mhm.
must be a way to get medicine. And so anyways, that, yeah. And so anyways, eventually I ended up in the Yukon, and my husband and I were living in the bush, and it was getting time to leave the bush. And I was thinking, well, done a lot of stuff, but I never really formalized in it my education. And I felt like I needed a piece of paper to manifest in the world, you know?
Sure.
Like I'd been like, kind of like a living outside of the social norm for a long time, and felt like I needed to kind of re-enter society in some way, and I needed a piece of paper. So I decided to become a herbalist. Yeah, I remember sitting in this field of flax,
Hmm.
Yeah, this meadow of the fat flax flowers, little mountains, and fireweed growing over on the really crooked old poplar trees.
Mm.
Anyways, decided to become a herbalist. And so I found we hitchhiked into Whitehorse, went to the coffee shop, got online, found Dominion,
Mm.
and decided to go to Dominion. Yeah.
And you
So
got your piece of paper.
then I got my piece of paper and started practicing herbalism and thought, what the hell? They didn't teach me anything. Oh, I shouldn't say that, because it's a really very strong science-based, very excellent
Yeah.
program. But there's that whole intuitive aspect of herbal medicine as well. There's the energetics. There's layers upon layers and upon layers of learning herbal medicine, and the science will only take you so far. And so yeah, that was my journey. And then it's really a clinic where I've learned my practicing putting herbs in people's bodies, that I really learned my medicine, and growing medicine. That's the other thing.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned maybe Dominion wasn't a good fit for you, but it is true. Like I've heard lots of stories of various herbalists getting their apprenticeships at different schools, and then them feeling as if it might have been a waste of their time or whatever. But in the end, I guess it's an expensive learning lesson to find out like what you truly do resonate with.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say Dominion is not a good school,
For
because
sure.
it definitely, but it's medical herbalism,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And not that medical, Chantel's one of my mentors, and
Hmm.
Chantel practices medical herbalism, and Chantel's coming to town. I'll sit in on a workshop with Chantel any day,
Yeah.
or I'll see her in the Kootenays, and I'll glued to her, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's not my style. It's not my style of herbal medicine. I think every herbalist has their own relationship with the plants and their own language with it,
Totally.
and that has to manifest for them to really become a true herbalist. Is they need to embody their language, their relationship, how they see the plants, how they see other bodies, and,
Hmm.
and I think that's really, just as every garden's different and every tree is different.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned Chantel and Dominion. What are some other herbal teachers or mentors you had?
Mm. Well, one of the great things about Dominion was there's a lot of different teachers that I worked with. There was one guy named Jamie Cabrera. He's not a herbalist anymore. He's living in Spain now. And he was a Mexican herbalist, amazing teacher. I don't know. Who have I studied with? I've studied with Matthew Woods. Really influenced me in my
Mm.
early days. Mostly his books, the the books where he explores the traditional herbal medicine, the
Mhm.
energetics, that really powerfully influenced my practice for a long time. I don't know who else has influenced me. I I went I work a lot with Lyme disease, chronic infection now, and I definitely, the Bruner protocol, which that there's a lot of challenges around talking about a protocol for a disease
Sure.
process as opposed to a person, right? Like there's a big, but some of his thought processes really informed me. Yeah, I guess just as I go along, I kind of, William Lecessier, I have all his CDs, and I listen to them when I
Mm.
drive to Toronto to see my mom. So I've listened to them many times and always pick something up. And yeah, I don't know, all sorts of different people I try to sit on. Some people I don't remember their names too.
Mhm.
You know, I've had the good fortune of there's a woman. I go to Mexico every year, and there's a woman. named Floridoma, and she's a Mayan herbalist, and she's taught me a lot about seeing things differently, like outside of my kind of like white box world.
Mm.
She's really helped me. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, yeah, I'm influenced by a lot of different, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You were talking about different styles of herbalism or approaches to plants, and I'm curious, are you able to kind of describe the way you see herbalism or the plant world?
What a question.
As in traditional Chinese medicine, Western
Mm,
herbalism,
I
but
love
you were
to,
talking about energetics and stuff, so I'm just curious, like, what's
yeah.
your kind of approach to the whole situation?
Well, I'm surprised because my students always say, "Oh, I love how you weave in the science." And I'm always like, "Oh, really?" Like, that's so interesting because I don't see myself, but I do go back to the science a lot. But I also love TCM, like,
Mhm.
and I love this idea. I love working with this idea that the body's a landscape and matching herbs for the landscape, just as one would in a garden, matching for the soil. I love those premises. I love also sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'm very eclectic in my working with plants. I try to stay as local bioregional as I can with my plants. I try to know my plants through growing them, or at least knowing them in the wild. Like, some plants are hard to know. Um, but yeah, I'm a very hands-on kind of herbalist. If it works, I keep it. If it doesn't, I get rid of it. Um, yeah, I don't know. How would I describe it? Yeah, I'm very hands-on, like pragmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, I don't want to learn like 500 herbs. I just want to know my herbs really well. And, it's just a lot of money to keep a big apothecary.
Sure.
It's a lot of work to keep a big
Yeah.
apothecary. And then, you only use that herb, or, I get curious about herbs, and then I'll learn that herb. But I'm like very pragmatic, very, you know, I have Venus and Mercury in Capricorn. So there's that pragmatic part of me that just, this makes sense, do it this way.
Hey everyone, it's Mason. Just a quick interruption from the show to let you know about our 13 herbal freebies. If you go to HerbRally.com, on the navigation bar at the top of the page, you'll see a button that says Freebies. Just click there and you'll sign up for our email newsletter. And in exchange, we're offering 13 herbal freebies. That's ebooks, webinars, videos, downloadable audio, and discounts to cool herbal companies. So if you'd like to check out these freebies as well as sign up for our email newsletter, we update you about current events, new monographs, new videos, etc. Just go to herbrally.com and click on the button at the top of the page that simply says freebies. Okay, that's it from me. Now back to the show.
Yeah.
Well, you're also not only an herbalist, but you're an author.
Yeah.
And as far as I can tell, you've written 4 books, which
Yeah.
I don't know if you describe that as prolific, but I certainly would. That's quite the accomplishment. I was curious, and perhaps this is just too big of a question to answer concisely, but I'm curious. What was the process? First of all, I guess, what is the synopsis of each book that you wrote, and then kind of what was the evolution of the book writing process? Like, why did you go from this book to the next one to the next one? Were you just kind of following your curiosities, or yeah, maybe that's just too big of a question to start out. Why don't we
I
start
can
with
answer that question. That's pretty easy actually to answer.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm
I
also
can do that.
curious about like the individual synopsis of each book for the HerbRally audience, because you've written on a number of different subjects.
Yeah. So this one, which needs updating and needs some work, like, quite frankly, I wrote this, I don't know, a few years ago now. So I have an apprentice program, and like, it was so weird. I graduated from Dominion, set up this office. I was so anal about it. It all had to be super perfect and everything. Now I'm like, just this chaos. And people just started showing up. We want to be your apprentice. We want to be your apprentice. And I'm like, I just graduated. I don't have anything to teach you. So after about the third person asking me, I'm like, okay, listen, who's coming to your door? Listen. So I just started teaching, and over the years it was refining and refining and refining. And then I ended up every month I would be photocopying like 20 pages for people, right? Oh, here. And it was costing me a fortune. And then I was rewriting them. And so that's how this book happened.
Hmm.
So it's kind of my year one of my apprentice program. Um, Although the program's definitely evolved quite a bit, and this needs updating, but that's how that one evolved. So it's a introduction to herbal medicine in preparation for clinic, for working in a clinical setting as a herbalist.
Hmm.
And then this, I don't have it here. There's another one that accompanies this, and it's the workbook. And so that was like, they had homework all the time. And so again, I was like photocopying all this homework all the time. And then I thought, no, I should just make a little booklet out of that. So it's like the workbook that accompanies this. And then there's like some nice stories in there too. I did some stories. And it's also in the clinical the apprenticeship I offer, I stress to people that this isn't about like your healing. This is about like using your gifts to support others' well-being, right? Like I'm very strong in that, because sometimes I find people join herbal programs for their own healing, which, that's what I do on a one-to-one. That's not what I teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I teach, okay, you got to manifest your gifts. Let's manifest them, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, so there's some heal yourself in this. Yeah. So anyways, it's kind of like all over the place. Dreams, big dreamer, herbal medicine and dreams. That's all in the second book, the workbook.
Hmm.
Then there's the weaving. This one.
Yeah.
So this is I never even, to this day, I don't know how to describe that book. And really, Floridoma, the Mayan herbalist I was she really influenced that book, because we were down in Mexico and we were sitting around talking about the Mayan astrology and the Mayan calendar, and she only speaks Mayan. So there was, working with her is very difficult because I don't speak Mayan and I don't speak Spanish. So it goes from Mayan to Spanish to English.
Hmm.
And so it takes a long time. You sit for a long time just waiting to receive the words in a language you can understand. So anyways, I walked away realizing that she only sees the world on a vibrational level. And that really got me thinking, and that was kind of like this book in some, and I love stories, right? So there's a lot of, I love stories, and I wrote it in the first part of COVID. So
yeah, it's somewhat newer.
Yeah, so a lot of what was going on in COVID kind of is mirrored in this book too. Indirectly, but like the George Floyd. What happened there? Like there's a chapter that I wrote really focused, like that was like all over the place for me at that point, right? All over the news, all over. And that one chapter on Angelica, the chapter on Angelica, really. So, and then there's this one. Yep. This is the vessel. This is about women, plants, and contraception. And I wasn't going to write about contraception. I had it wasn't even on my radar. I work with bacteria, bacteria and plants. That's like, I work with everything, but I love that, trying to figure out how to work with chronic infection, because it's, it's a real paradigm shift for me. Right. And I was going to write about that, but then I was getting bogged down thinking about what other people would think. Can't write and be thinking about what other people think, because it just like blocks. It's the worst thing a writer could do. So all of a sudden I had a dream, and in this dream there was a pink box, or a box wrapped in pink plastic paper on an assembly line. And I woke up and I'm like, that was kind of an odd dream. And I didn't have anything. And then all of a sudden that week, like 3 women asked me about contraception, and the dream went boom. That dream's about contraception. And so I started unpacking that box, and this book arose. And then partway through it, Roe v. Wade, halfway, like I pretty much finished the book when Roe v. Wade kind of, oh my God. And so I'm like going, and my editor freaked out and was like, "You're going to get sued. You're going to get in so much trouble for this book." And I'm like,
really?
I'm like, "No, I'm up here in the woods in Quebec. Like, it's going to be a non-issue, you know?" No. So then, I fired her.
Okay. You got to do what you got to do.
You can only have so much fear coming into your life, right? Like, I can, and so I couldn't handle all the fear. So I still love her, but
Sure.
no, you got to keep that somewhere else. That can't infect me. And so, and I found another editor, and
How did that pan out? Did you get in any sort of trouble, or has it just been a good success for you? Or okay,
it's kind of it's an interest. I don't know. It's kind of like moving along. It's interesting. It's a hard book. There's some I cover I cover hard issues. Like, it's the health of the history of the uterus is a dark, bloody history. And it's enraging and it's terrifying. And and it was a really hard book to write. And so, but I hope it's also funny, and my intention was always to bring upliftment and autonomy, that we have autonomy. And that's really the gift of herbal medicine, is autonomy. Like, we don't need someone else to tell us what to do. It's good to get opinions.
For the HerbRally audience, maybe you've already heard the episode, but Abrah was kind enough to record like a 30-minute reading from the book. So thanks for doing that. And I remember listening to it. I believe it was over the summer, and it was, you bring up the issues, and you bring up the history and the dark side and everything. And I thought you did a great job with the reading, and I encourage you to go listen to that 30 minutes. And I'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well. But I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to do that.
No, thanks for helping me with getting the book out. It's
sure.
It's it was an interesting journey, that book.
I like how you said it was just kind of happened organically. You just felt compelled to write it.
It landed in my plate, like, do what's in front of you kind of thing. And that was what was it. And it just came, like, it was boom. I wrote it very quickly.
I was going to ask, do you have any advice for someone who wants to write a book, whether it's herbal or not?
Write about what you're passionate about. Write what you have energy for. Don't write for others. Write about your experience. Write what you have energy for. Like, where's your fire? Write that. Don't try to. Don't write for someone else. Write, and don't be scared that your voice doesn't matter.
I really liked how you earlier said, don't let fear get in the way too, because that's just going to kind of stunt any sort of creativity you have.
Fear's good, because fear is useful in that it gets the energy, like it's like a conflict. Fear creates like an inner so it gets like the spark. It's like rubbing sticks together, like, oh God. And then all of a sudden, boom, let it come, right? Let the fire just come.
So don't let fear prevent you from doing it, but use fear as a motivator. I really like that. Did you have any, we were talking pre-call that you had some book recommendations for whether you're an herbalist or not. So did you want to share some of those books?
So as a herbalist, I think these are really great books. As as a clinical herbalist, I think these are really great books. So this one, Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And I would say most of the work I do in terms of supporting people with herbal medicine, underlying cause is trauma, intergenerational trauma, personal trauma. And so it's really important to understand how trauma affects chronic illness. And so this is a really important book for herbalists to read. Love Bacteria. This is such a great book for bacteria, for having a deeper, broader understanding of bacteria. Ed Young, he's sort of a pop science writer. Really enjoyable book to read, easy to read, and doesn't use a lot of like complex language. Yeah, love
Sounds
this
like my
book.
speed.
Love this book. I love this book. Yeah, so I Contain Multitudes. It's about the bacteria in your body, and really talks a lot about breast milk, building the gut, and the whole development of the gut wall with breast milk. And so it's really an important book to understand bacteria, because we do work with bacteria with plants all the time. That's what plants do. And then I see a lot of pain in clinic. I see a lot of pain, and there's all the psychological aspects of pain, and we all have different types of relationships with pain. And so this is a book that I also think is really important for people to look at from a clinical point of view, different ways of thinking about pain and how to talk about pain, and things people can give people to do to support the work of the herbs. So sort of a mind-body approach to pain, as opposed to, oh, here's an analgesic, right? So those are my book recommendations.
Thanks. Yeah, I've heard of the Body Keeps a Score. Like, I've done years of therapy and everything, and I've heard that book come up a million times. I'm yet to read it, but maybe this will be the time I finally read it. I've been more of an audio book type of person, but lately, so maybe I'll get that on the audio. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And you also mentioned your love of microbes and bacteria.
Yeah.
Just before the call, I was actually reading. I started reading your sunflower article that you wrote, I want to say in January, and you were like just kind of. I loved it. You were like almost kind of nerding out on the fact that your compost and the bacteria was helping feed the growth of the sunflower. And just a quick break from the show to let you know about the HerbRally events page. Did you know that we add new herbalism events from all over the United States and the world, for that matter, on an almost daily basis? You can peruse herbalism events at herbrally.com/events and hopefully find something in your neck of the woods. You can also search by state to make it even easier to find a plant walk, conference, or class near you. And we also list virtual herbalism events as well. Check those out at herbrally.com/virtual. And again, for the in-person events, go to herbrally.com/events. All right, back to the show. Amanda and we love sunflowers, and we're like anticipating getting back to Wisconsin so we could plant some, so we can have some this spring and summer. But I was just curious if you wouldn't mind chatting about your love of sunflower, if you had any sort of insights or things you wanted to share with the audience, specifically around sunflower. Yeah.
Well, my husband and I have this whole thing about sunflowers, because he's kind of like, just let the sunflowers grow wherever, right? And I'm like, no, they can't do that, right? And so like last year we had all these sunflowers and our blueberries, and it was interfering with the blueberries. And I'm going like, you have sunflowers as opposed to blueberries. What are you going to do, right? Like, you got to make a choice. You can't grow it. You can't. And so anyways, but he has this love, like he just loves sunflowers. So anyways, I think this year we're going to corral them a little bit, hopefully. But yeah. And, I don't know, what can I say about sunflowers? Yeah, my yard's full of them because I feed the birds all winter long, and I'm looking out a window right now and there's all sorts of chickadees, and there's a woodpecker and some snow buntings. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And yeah, so that's for me, the sunflower really is like, and like I feed the animals. We get all sorts of animals in our yard for them. The deer will come in, in the deep winter and take the sunflowers. Not here where I live right now, although we do have bears in this area, but they don't come into where I live. I remember I had this big bird feeding place right outside of a kitchen window where I did the dishes. And one day I'm doing the dishes and this bear just shows up and like tears the whole bird feeder apart and just eats all the sunflowers. So like,
oh wow,
sunflower seeds. Yeah. So they're like, they're big nutrition and they're easy to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I like to, they're generous. It's generous to tend to other beings,
I love that. Yeah, I was doing story time before this call with Amanda. I was like reading your blog post out loud, and she said she really liked the idea of how you do use it as like bird food, because we're looking at getting a bunch of like different bird feeders too, and we're like, oh, we could grow the sunflower seeds in the sunflower and then put them in the bird feeders, or just have them eat it straight off the
oh yes. So we just tie them all over the place. Like we take, and we just tie them all over the fences, and then they're in the fall, right? But they'll be gone. Those heads will be like, the birds will just, in the fall, boom, gone. And then all summer long we have it. And right now we have sort of like the migration of the birds coming through. So all sorts of different types of birds. Yeah, it's, it's hard for birds right now. They've lost a lot of their habitat. It's a hard time for birds right now. And so I know some people say you shouldn't feed them, but
it's hard not to. I really like the idea of, let's say you're on a road trip and you need some food, you need some nutrition, and there's these convenience stores and that's all you have access to at the time. And I like the idea of going to the convenience store and trying to find, say, like the most nutritious food available there. And a lot of times it's just like the in-shelled sunflower seeds. I don't know about, like, there might be some sort of rancidity concerns or whatnot, but at the same time, it's like, it's one of the only foods there that you could buy that's like a one ingredient on the list. And it's just, sunflowers are so beautiful, so ubiquitous. And I just really love that about them. Plus their beauty.
Oh yeah. They bring all sorts of different types of things into the garden. Like we have all the kids from the neighborhood all come to see the sunflowers, like
totally.
Old ladies stop and tell you stories about sunflowers, like it just creates community. It's a plant that really does community.
Yeah, those big flower heads just like put people in awe for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, why don't we shift gears a little bit? I was curious, what is something you do daily to practice your craft?
Oh, well, I work with plants every day, like if it's not talking to people about plants, it's teaching like about their health and like deciding, what plants to offer them, or if it's not making medicine, it's, or if it's like growing or reading. Like today I was going back to yarrow and reading different people's ideas about yarrow. And I'm like, because I was thinking about a woman and I was thinking, yarrow is a really good plant. And then I'm like, but how do I really like format that in my mind? Like, I like the intuitive analytical aspect of, and so I was going through a few different writers and looking at their thoughts on yarrow and then decided, I'm on track. Yeah. So, it's every day, or, going like, looking deep into history with plants. I'm a bit of a history geek. So looking at how plants have been used and going back in time and thinking about plants. And I don't know. I just every day. And then I eat them all the time too, right? Like I'm always eating plants. So growing them right now, it's all about my little seedlings. I just bought more squash seeds. Which is going to be a conversation with my husband. He's going to go, okay, so you can't have all that squash if I can't have all the sunflowers.
Right. I love it. It sounds like just herbalism infuses your everyday life from the mental, the spiritual, the physical.
Pretty much.
I can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, if you're a herbalist, if that's your trade, that's
Yeah.
what you're doing, it's
I
like,
even got herbs on my clothes. I don't know if you can see that or not.
oh yeah. I don't have herbs on my clothes today,
Not
but
today. Okay.
no.
Well, I was gonna say this is one of our pet
Oh,
appearances.
look at how beautiful.
Yeah,
What
this is
kind of cat is that? Is that?
she's a Siamese, I think.
Oh, because we were cat sitting a cat that looked a lot like that.
Hmm.
And
I think that's what Amanda calls her, Siamese, but
oh yeah.
yeah. All right, Abra, tell me about the wild animals.
Wild animals? Okay, so I've had a lot of wild animal encounters because I've lived in the bush a lot. And so we were up in the Yukon and we were living in the bush. So we were about an hour and a half walk from the Alaskan highway. And it was actually, where our cabin was at the end of this road that during the Second World War, the American Army had made in case the Japanese invaded through Alaska. So it was this old, like, it wasn't really a road anymore, right? But anyways, so we're living at the end of this road, and we're about to leave the Yukon, and we've been there for a year living in this cabin with no electricity, no running water, and it's kind of scary, because we've been just in the bush, and my mind is in 1,000 different places, and I'm walking along a path and I'm not really paying attention, and I look up and I'm just like, I'm in the meadow I'm not far from the cabin, and I look up and there's a lynx
Wow.
standing right on the path. Like, it's standing there right in front of me, about not very far. Like, yeah. So I'm like looking at and it was like all of a sudden, like, when you take a psychedelic and all of a sudden it hits your body and it's like boom, everything's
Yeah.
really super awake. You know that feeling?
Oh yeah.
That's what it was like.
Wow.
Seeing, like, having this lynx in front of me. And I was like, holy cow. So I'm like, okay, moose, I know what to do. Bear, I know what to do. Grizzly, I know what to do. Lynx, I have no idea. So we just stood there looking at each other. And I just thought, and she's between me and the cabin. And I'm like, okay, I got to get to the cabin. So I just like carefully walked, made a big loop around her, talking to her like, it's okay. I'm just walking by. I'm not going to hurt you, get into the cabin. I'm like, and so anyway, she hung out with us for like a month and a half. Our last month and a half, she hung out with us, and she was a young lynx,
Wow.
and she had never probably seen people before, and she just hung out with us, and it was
Wow.
like, I don't want to think we were patting her, and that we never
Sure.
allowed that kind of contact, but it
Yeah.
was like, I'd come out in the morning and she'd be there and she'd see me and go about her business and I'd go about my business. And yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I can't
Yeah.
even imagine what that would be like. I always say, like house cats are my spirit animal or whatever.
Yeah.
I could only imagine getting to kind of hang out with a lynx.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. And then, anyway, so right before we left, we
Mhm.
had, gone into Whitehorse and we were coming back, and it was getting dark and it was raining, and we had a car. We'd gone and bought a car. So we pull into this road, and you can't drive too far down this road because it's not really a road, right?
Yeah.
And it's pouring rain and it's getting dark, and it's like, oh man, we don't want to walk down this road right now because it's just miserable. And pull into the road, and there, right in the headlight, is this huge male lynx. And
Wow.
we're like, whoa. So anyways, we followed him about halfway down the road. He walked in front of the car and we just,
Well,
I know. And eventually we had to get out and walk because of the mud. But
right. When you saw the male lynx, did you have a similar psychedelic experience?
No, it wasn't. It was just like, whoa, no, it wasn't like, it was like that day, like, I don't know, like to be that close to, and she was so curious. She was just there like, oh, what is this? It was not threatened at all, like had no fear of us, but at the same time, kept her respectful distance, just as we kept a respectful distance. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
thank you for sharing. What an experience. I'm guessing that you're bringing this up because of the wildlife question that was in a previous episode.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was unorganized today, and I didn't have my deck of random question cards. So thank you for indulging us regardless.
Oh, that's okay. I love telling that story.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you heard the previous episode, I had a very lame answer to that question. I don't have many crazy wildlife experiences like that, but yeah, that's incredible, Abrah.
Where are you right now? I'm looking at those trees back there, and
Yeah, so actually, you can't quite see it, but there's right by the trees is a blooming Oregon grape.
oh,
I'm actually in Eugene, Oregon right now.
oh,
Yeah, so and we moved to Wisconsin, so our permanent residence is actually in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is probably sort of similar weather to where you're at.
yeah, similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking at I try to grow Oregon grape. I was looking at
Mm.
it yesterday, and I'm like, it just
Yeah,
doesn't look very happy.
it's all over the hillsides over here. I mean, it's like ground cover in certain parts, so
Yeah,
yeah.
what a great plant that is. Whoa.
Real, yeah, for real. Yeah, it's one of like the flagship plants that Howie Brownstein teaches about at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, which was the first apprenticeship that I took here in Eugene.
Yeah,
Highly
what does he
recommended.
say? What does he say about it?
I mean, just off the top of my head, it's like a bitter. So
Yeah.
we go over a lot of the bitter attributes of it. So you had the undercooked lentil loaf at the Brighton Bush Herbal Conference, and you need a bitter. I think that might be a Michael Moore joke as opposed to a Howie
Remind
Brownstein,
me
but
not to eat this lentil.
yeah, just a bitter. It's got that, like the yellow substance in it,
Yeah,
the berberine.
yeah,
So yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a herbal ally for a lot of West Cascades Oregonians. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Fantastic plant.
definitely. So I did want to kind of touch base on some. Do you have any like fun projects coming up or events that you wanted to share, or you want to
Well,
let the audience know about?
do I have, well, yeah, I don't know if your audience is interested in something like this, but yeah, so I moved to this area about 5 years ago, and it's very beautiful here. It's a very, very beautiful, it's called the Gatineau Hills. It's a little lakes and forest, big maple stands, a lot of
Hmm.
really interesting plants grow here. Anyways, so the first Wakefield Herb Gathering. That's the
Hmm.
village closest to my home. So we're doing the Wakefield Herb Gathering, and it's a bilingual, so it's French English, and then
Cool.
yeah, and there's a fairly active First Nations community here, so we're having a number of First Nations come as well. So that's pretty exciting, and it's the theme is 100-mile medicine.
Hmm.
So we're only talking about the plant, everything that's 100 miles, or you can put in a garden, right? So 100-mile
Hmm.
medicine. Yeah, it's exciting. And it's our first one. And I don't know, it's all local herbalists, like local plant people, people who do stuff with plants too. So there's like Penny Boudreau, Back to Your Roots in September is a huge, like Rosemary Gladstar's there,
Yeah.
like how, like, wow, how exciting, right? But yeah, so this is all like really like local community building kind of event, which I'm really happy that I can do that. And then I have an apprenticeship, very hands-on clinical practice, you know small group, do it, like,
Yeah.
it's pretty intense,
Mm.
but I really think you learn your herbs putting them in people's bodies and seeing what happens, and so that's what we do. And yeah, it's fun and it's intense, and I love the intimacy of the relationship with that develops with the students within the little, in many ways I'm a student in the class as well, because they're such incredible human beings I have the blessing to work with this year, so they're teaching me so much. And so yeah, it's pretty intense, it's fun, it's good. And then what else? Oh, Margie Flint's coming. Every year I try to bring in a herbalist that has something really significant to share about their experience of herbal medicine. Last year it was Lisa Ganora. This year it's Margie Flint. So Margie Flint's coming in to Ottawa to do Reading the Body. So just trying to up the level of herbal medicine a bit,
Love that.
like with some elders, right? Like people who've like specialized in something. Chanchelle was here talking about cancer. So there's different, so I don't know who I'll invite next year. I've been pondering that.
How does that work? So you have do they come to your house and teach, or do you have a classroom there, or?
Well, I have a loft where I teach, but when I bring someone in, there's a space that's called, it's about food sovereignty. It's just outside of Ottawa. I live near the capital city, right? So there's big advantages to living near a capital city. And one of them is in Canada, the federal government has these pieces of land that is for everybody. And so we have this massive park, 10 minutes from my house, where we can walk, we go caving, lakes. It's just beautiful. And it's public land. And then, so I hold it on one of those sites that's an old farm, and there's this big old redone barn. And so we can have easily 50 people. Well, you could probably do 100, but that's too many people. So about 50 is top, I'd like. And so it's in this old barn, and then there's all these meadows and forest around us. And so that's where we do those classes.
Sounds awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, you said you're not sure if the HerbRally audience would be interested, but theoretically we have herbalists listening from all over. So, maybe some people found out about the event through here. And I'll certainly list the 100-mile medicine event. I don't think I have that listed on our events page yet.
No, I haven't really popped it up yet.
Okay.
So
do you want me to share it, or?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send you
please
the
do.
link. Yeah, I haven't really, it's
Right
in
on.
August, so we've got lots of time. Yeah. And then once in a while I'll do some plants and contraception or something, but I'm really wanting and then I do a little garden internship as well, but I like a really small group there so I can make sure that they're not picking weeds that I want to keep. And
Totally.
I'm a little anal in the garden.
That's all right.
I've been called, but anyways, there's some rules in the garden, so I want to run it pretty tight. And then but I'm thinking I'm really interested in the relationship between dreams and health and plants, and so I keep thinking about doing something along that line, but I haven't quite gotten there.
Nice. Any books you're working on right now that you're allowed to share about, or?
Well, okay. In September, I decided because this book I had to recover from. This was an intense book to write.
I bet.
Well, it kind of sent me into therapy for a little bit. This book, it was I was getting a bit of enraged, by what I was reading about, right? And so, anyways, so in September, I'm going to really work on bacteria, plants and bacteria, that beautiful, the relationship between, animal bodies, plants, and microbes in that relationship. And every plant interacts with microbes in some way. Every single plant there, there isn't really such thing as an antimicrobial. And so I've been thinking a lot about using the prefix of anti for medicine, and it doesn't really carry over in a good way when we're talking about plant medicine. And so with plants, it's more like they help the management of the biome, like the planetary biome. Like they're part of the weaving of the biome. They help manage it. They encourage it. They discourage it. They use it. They feed it. They destroy it. They do all sorts of things with microbes, plants. So our biome is, how separate is it from the planetary biome, the human microbiome, and then that relationship with the plants. So that's what I want to write about, is that sort of triangle of relationships between, and how every plant in some ways is interacting with the microbiome. And I think how little we understand about bacteria, because we've had this really bad. And I was saying before how I was really sick at one point, and my doctor was an infectious disease doctor who had been hired by the main hospital in Singapore to set up an infectious disease clinic. He was from Texas, and this guy, he was like, that's his thing, right? Like he was like this high-end super expert on infectious disease. And he said to me, when I got out of that hospital, he said he'd never put so many antibiotics in any single body in his entire life. So it's like my whole world is around my health, is all about like the biome, right? And to this day, I can't really handle kimchi, right? And it's interesting watching how the plants interact with the biome and so I think that's a whole area, because sometimes I wonder if the plants aren't acting more with the biome, the bacteria in the body, than the actual body itself.
Wow. I think you're going to find some things out when you write this book.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know where to, so it's kind of I go, So anyways, I'm going to take some time off after Pennies, Back to the Roots. I'm going to take 3 months off, I think, and just do some teaching still, but really just see how, because I really have to think about it, know, and it's hard to think when you've got 20 things going on in a day.
Out of my own selfish curiosity, what does that look like for you when you think about writing these types of things? Is it literally just sitting in your chair and pondering and taking notes and oh, I want to go down this path, or how does that look?
Well, a lot of walking.
Okay.
Walking, I walk a lot, and I look around, Yeah. And I'll ask for dreams and really watch my dreams really closely.
Yeah.
And then read lots of science, try to understand it. I have a learning disability, so anything that's beyond 7 letters, a word that's beyond 7 letters, is very challenging for me. And it bothers me that science uses such difficult language. So try to really do a lot of reading and a lot of mind maps.
Oh, okay.
That's how I do it, is with mind maps. And then once I have a really good mind map, then I put it into a linear form.
So walking, reading the science, mind maps, and dreaming, that sounds like a nice formula.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
You need some time for it.
Totally. Yeah, I go on a lot of walks too, like you. In fact, it was funny, pre-call, you're like, I'm going to go on a walk first. Prepare. I go on a ton of walks too. And a lot of times when I'm walking, I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks, but really what I need to be doing more of is just thinking instead. And I've been trying to incorporate that more to kind of just gather my own thoughts, organize them.
Yeah, I find walking's really good for settling the mind, but also you're seeing a biome in action when you're walking, right? This is what's happening.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. That's a good way to put it. Right on. Well, it's been about an hour, and I want to end on what's your big why for being an herbalist, and what keeps you learning and growing?
Well, I listened to your podcast with Chanchelle, and she said, "Oh, being a herbalist is the most radical thing you can do," and I actually
Mm.
believe that too. And I get to say really wild things like, you know, I think that maybe we need to look at plants interacting with the biome more than
Yeah.
like interacting with the. I get to say really wild things like that, and I get to talk about like, oh yeah, and then there's the astrology and the like, I don't know, it's just endless. I can do anything, and it's always goes back to the plants. And yeah, so there's never a moment where it's sometimes it can get a bit repetitive, but with like, okay, I'm gonna make another, like, Oregon grape tincture, right?
Yeah.
But it can get a bit repetitive for me in that way. Or washing bottles, like that's kind of the pain of the herbalist, right? Washing bottles. But
Yes.
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. And also it makes people better, and watching people like grow and get better and feel good, and like it's pretty incredible. Like when someone's been like going to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor, taking drug after drug after, and they never are getting better, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, I slept. You're like, yes. It's like, I have that little competitive side of me, so I like
Sure.
to compete with the like medical system out there. I'm like, I'm better.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I get to do so many things. It's good. I love herbal medicine. Yeah, it's been very good to me. It's been very good to me. For those young herbalists out there that are trying to figure it out, and it's so hard when you first start out, right? It's like really hard. Like, I know it's really hard. And I remember driving along, I'm in this like mid-central Alberta town, which is pretty hard place to start off as a herbalist, and it's like, April, everything's brown, dusty, there's like a Canadian Tire. You guys probably don't have a Canadian Tire, but it's like this big, store with everything in it. And then there's a Walmart over on the other corner, and then, a bunch of like pizza places or something. Like, it's just like this kind of industrial strip mall, sitting there at this red light. Everything's dusty. It's a mess. It's like, I have no money. I have debt from school. I'm driving a crap car that's, I got to get fixed. I don't have the money for, that kind of stuff. Like, just,
Yeah.
right. And I'm like, I can't. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm sitting in the car thinking, I just can't do this. And then this little juniper berry bush over on the side, those like crazy little garden things they try to make at these kind of intersections, dusty, covered in like road crap from the winter. This little juniper berry bush goes, don't worry, Abrah, we'll help you. And the plants they'll help you. So
I love that. That's a
and that's
great.
the best part about being a herbalist, I think, is that
Sure.
that relationship, right?
Amen. Yeah, I like that you gleaned from Chanchelle's talk the idea of radical.
Oh yeah.
And I looked up the definition here. The second one is advocating or based on thorough or complete political or social change,
Yeah.
which I really like. Yeah, I could see herbalism as being radical, but then I also think of it as like the totally righteous. And the root. Yeah, but like it's a radical. It's like, it's super cool. It's a fun thing to do. Yeah, it's interesting that there's so many different definitions to radical, and I think it kind of ties it up nicely as to why you're an herbalist, why I'm an herbalist, and
yeah,
I love hearing it.
yeah. Every herbalist I know is like pretty off the wall.
Yeah.
We're a bunch of weirdos.
We're a bunch of kooky people. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is a fact. Yep. Well, very cool. Where can people learn more about you? Is it abraherbs.com off the top of my head?
Yeah, that's off. Yeah, I'm not very good at blogging up there, but I try once in a while.
Well, I really liked your Abraherbs, and I see you got kind of a little word play there. It's abraherbs.com. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And honestly, you have I like your website. You got those articles on there, and yeah, you can find out about your events and everything. So yeah.
Great. Thanks. fun.
Thanks for joining me on the Herbalist Hour, Abrah. Any closing thoughts or anything?
No, keep doing what you're doing.
All
It's
right.
beautiful.
Thank you very much, and likewise, and we'll see y'all on the next episode.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.